right, we told you about this Bloomberg story that China-U.S. trade talks have hit a bump here over certain concessions on the part of China. The Wall Street Journal separately reporting that they're still in their final stages regardless, and that our trade representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin will be flying off to Beijing next week, presumably to close the deal. Let's get the read from Lee Spieckerman. He says that a permanent import tariff would keep factories here, so he wants to obviously to keep applying the pressure. Lee, a lot of people come back and say that's the last thing we want to do. Why?
Well, because we cannot possibly police all of the industrial policies, the subsidies, the currency manipulations that China uses to push their exports and stifle American imports. And you reported earlier that China's now talking about walking back some of its commitments on intellectual property theft, which it conducts in a grandiose scale, hundreds of billions of dollars from Americans. A tariff would take care of that. Put the damn tariff on. Stop trying to police things that are impossible to police. Raise the revenue. A tariff on just a 15% tariff on Chinese imports would yield nearly $1 trillion over the next 10 years, Neil. That's enough to make the middle income tax and the Trump tax cut permanent, so they wouldn't wouldn't expire.
We pay for that.
That would be great for our country.
We pay for that.
Neil, we're paying right now by losing 10% or more of our middle class over the past 20 years.
So how is paying a tariff on something, that would be digging more into the wallet for average Americans going to ease that burden?
Well, again, the middle class tax cuts were a boon to the middle class in our country, and having a tariff on imports to make those tax cuts permanent is fantastic for the middle class. Plus, it creates more American manufacturing employment, and it creates better American incomes, because right now, as I've said before, this importing and offshoring orgy that we've had over the past 20 years has imploded middle class incomes. When you can access workers overseas making a few dollars an hour, sometimes less than $10 a day, that's terrible for American workers.
But our trade deficit has ballooned,
you don't have
right?
American profits without American jobs.
I hear you, Lee, but our trade deficit has ballooned. Some would argue because of the economy the president's policies have generated, and Americans are more than willing, I wouldn't know about happy, but happy to pay for these more expensive imports because things are going so well.
Well, the tariffs that President Trump already imposed on aluminum washing machines have yielded already over 10,000 jobs in this country, according to studies, increased profits for the manufacturers of those products, increased investment and employment in those sectors. We've got to extend that across the board.
So you would apply this as a pressure, right? A lever on the Chinese, but more than that, you wouldn't let go of it until you had clear, palpable signs that they were doing what they said they would.
We need whatever our trade deal with China, and Lighthizer is a brilliant guy, but the Chinese are ruthless, and unfortunately they have a history of not living up to their agreements. We need to have a glide path to a zero goods trade deficit. Right now, Neil, it's nearly $500 billion a year. We have to borrow that or sell assets to pay for that every year. $500 billion with China. That is not acceptable, and we have got to take care of that. Any deal we make needs to have a glide path to take that to zero in 10 years or less. There need to be triggers to where any year that we don't meet the target, tariffs are automatically added or increased. And again, look at pickup trucks, Neil. That is one of the greatest economic successes in our country. We've had a 25% tariff on pickup truck imports since the 1960s. And look at it, 3 of the top selling vehicles in our country, the 3 top selling, are pickup trucks. Thousands of well-paid American workers at U.S. and Asian-owned plants making pickup trucks. It's a boon for our economy. We need to extend that across the board to all automobiles, all manufactured goods.
I respect you highly, Lee, but man, that's a risky venture there.
High praise coming from you.
I want to get you back to talk about this. Always good seeing you, my friend. Lee Spieckerman.